And you've been to the barber shop.
Well, I thought, you know what, might as well sort of go for the kind of full-on Eric Doyle today.
Quite right. You haven't got that sort of expansive, just like raw scalp in the middle.
Do you know what? Though it's funny though, because like 2-3 weeks ago, got invited after the rugby training in the morning for the boy to one of the other coaches for bacon rolls and coffee, and it was one of those days where the weekend it started blazing, and honest to God, you sort of realise, how white and pasty you've become over the course of the winter, because 1 hour in sort of about 12 degrees of Aberdeen sunshine, and we're scalping. Absolutely scalping.
Did you just use scalp it?
Oh, unbelievable!
Yeah, quite right. I love it. No, that's spot on. I felt myself. We went to Tarland in our new caravan, as we were talking about the other day, and on the 1 hour where the sun came out from behind the grey clouds, I could feel myself crisping up.
You feel everything sort of tightening up, don't you?
Yeah, totally. Where's my moisturiser? Anyway, so let's do this. Good morning. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Yeah, I'm about as good as you get, I think, at the tail end of lockdown, and it's not as sunny as it was yesterday, but it looks okay. Can't complain.
Yeah, quite right.
How are you?
I'm brilliant, thank you. Yeah, absolutely great. Glad that we're able to get out more, and Sarah and I went out with a joint friend that we have and his wife. We went out on Saturday night, and that was odd for me because Sarah had been out a few times in between lockdowns. I went from the start of lockdown. I've never been out.
Right.
From the original March time lockdown, whenever it was. So I have to say, getting in a taxi, going into a restaurant, it was like something from a sort of like a strange computer game that I was playing for a while. It felt a bit odd.
And how did you feel? I was going to say, how did you feel about it then? Because I went to B&Q about 4 weeks ago on a Sunday, and it was a real anxious feeling, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
The most comfortable part was the bit outside, standing in the queue, because everyone was nicely socially distanced, and you stood there. Well, you got in free for all, and it was an absolute free for all. And I was sitting thinking, I'm going to have to build my confidence back up with this.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree, and I'm actually there too. I was sitting in a taxi, going, how can we all of a sudden just be in a taxi? How does that work? From like stay in, lock the door, seal up all the vents, don't touch anything, to now we're out. So we went to one place for dinner, which was really well done, really, like I would say so process driven that it maybe stole a bit of the fun at the start. But then, of course, when friends arrive, you get into it and it was just awesome. Then we went to another place where they were a wee bit more relaxed. A wee bit more relaxed. And clearly a bunch of kids that have been, have now turned 18 were like, well, we're booking tables and we're going there and we're going to party hard. So, difficult to control a bunch of 18-year-olds that are doing shots and all of that. So, but then seeing them get up a little bit intoxicated and put a mask on to go to the toilet, still doing it.
Well, that's quite positive, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think there's a weird dynamic in my house. I'm going to have to get used to it, I think, because my wife and kids have been going out to school since about January, right? So I think all of them now are just living what feels like normal life to them. Whereas, I'm very similar to you, that, if I get a chance to go and meet somebody outside, I've been grabbing it, I've been taking it and doing those things. But indoors and normal activities and shopping and turning up to an office and stuff, it's just not been there. It's not part of my life anymore. And I do think it's going to take me a little bit of time to kind of get over myself and just, that said, I got my jab last Friday and I woke up with like intense excitement at receiving this thing, that it wasn't conceived of 14 months ago. And so that excitement then sort of, it kind of ebbed into kind of a bit of pride actually about where we were,
Yeah, totally.
And it was kind of a special, kind of exciting, enjoyable day going out to get that little.
How did you feel? Because I'm guessing you get your jab in the same place that I did it, out at Tekka.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that whole experience?
Unbelievably organized.
What's it like?
I just was. It was a joy, to kind of to drive in, because you drive in and the car park was quite full, and I'm thinking, okay, there's quite a lot of people here.
Yeah.
And then you get inside, And it was just, you never waited for a second. It was just a continual movement of people in and out. Slowest bit was that kind of 15 minutes at the end where you sit and they just check you don't have some awful, horrendous reaction fall to the ground.
I felt a little overwhelmed by it. It was a little bit like dystopian. I was on a Sunday at 5 o'clock at night, so very few people, kind of empty actually. And one of the lovely people there told me that, she said, this is, you just walked right in through that thing, right to here, and you're next. She said, some days there's 2,500 people in that queue.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy moly. So I was overwhelmed by the kind of like dystopian concreteness of it all. It was almost like, but then I found myself when I got up to the desks, I was thanking everybody, like I was thanking ex-forces people coming back off a plane. Thanks for doing this, by the way. You're doing a great job. Thanks for doing this, by the way. You're doing a great job.
but totally right, isn't it? Because, these guys have been out there and doing this stuff all the way through. Whereas, as much as we're kind of sitting there going, I'm going to have to get my confidence back. I've been sitting with these four walls surrounded in perfect safety for the last 14 months, so you can't avoid your privilege sometimes in these kind of situations, no. And these guys have been turning up and knocking it out of the park for forever. I've had a lot of, got some friends speaking to them about the experiences of working in the hospital and stuff during this, and you just think, these guys are living or have been living a very, very different life to a lot of us over the last year, and it's been a pretty impressive thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a few neighbours that are nurses and stuff, and watching these people come home and they're spent, they are broken. From the hospitals, they've got that look of, I don't have another ounce of energy. I'm actually running on 3 days energy ahead of time. So right, okay. So enough of this chatter. This is all about you. So you're a well-known chap for people in a particular, many regions and maybe a number of industries will know about Chris West and the fact that you're with Optimus. But for those that don't know, you're CEO of Optimus, Engineering Consultancy. What's the 30-second elevator speech about what Optimus are doing these days and what it's all about?
Well, you've said an awful lot of yourself. We are a bunch of engineers that are into engineering. That's been the case since day one. We've been around about 21 years. Ian Bell founded the company.
21 years.
21 years. This first year, it's been around a long time now. It's been well established. And you know what? It's a bunch of engineers that are focused around delivering to the client's expectations and building relationships along the way. We're not a big outfit, and therefore we live and die by the quality of our reputation and the relationships we build along the way. So that's what it's all about. It's a very simple sounding little bunch of people there, but a few complexities involved. And we like to keep engineering as simple as we can, take the complexity out.
What aspects of engineering would you say are your sort of go-to zones?
So we started off in kind of process and tech safety. That was kind of the shape of the company for probably the first almost decade of its life. And then it's really kind of shifted. So process was really heavy when I started back in 2010. And then there was kind of this balancing act where everybody grew at the same time up to about 2014, and then 2015 came along, and that's just kind of, it killed the sort of front end of the engineering life cycle. So we became, or over the last 5 years, we've become very, very kind of structurally heavy within the business. So the structural is probably the biggest part of the company at the moment. And they've survived on kind of maintenance and integrity-led brownfield modification work for the last 5 or 6 years and kept the company ticking over and doing well during that time. And now we're starting to see that kind of return to the bigger projects and the front-end work and the clients really sort of waking up as oil prices start to recover and people start looking to the future again.
Awesome. Large percentage oil and gas, I guess, but I'm sure dragged into other industries.
Yeah, totally focused on oil and gas in the past. In some ways, I think that lockdown itself and the way the last year, really sort of jolted us into this kind of realization. We knew diversification was there, and we'd kind of dipped our toes in various projects over the last 4 or 5 years, quite opportunistically, I guess.
Right.
Some projects just presented an opportunity, and all of a sudden now it's about kind of working out this idea that we have to balance the channels of revenue that are coming through the company now. So we've gotten really involved in the carbon capture conversation, which is a super exciting one. Mm-hmm. I've genuinely, over the course of the last 6 months, we're having a conversation about a particular project that kicked off only last month. There's a real tangible excitement about it from the engineers. There's almost the kind of the queue of guys get me on this project.
Get me on this project. Yeah, brilliant.
Fun, you know, because it's real sort of chemistry bench stuff. It's starting from, you know, from scratch and turning something into reality, which you don't get a lot of, I think, at our level in oil and gas these days.
Yeah.
A lot kind of, you know, it's a lot of mid-life cycle work.
Yeah.
So yes,
cool.
that was really exciting, and we're getting involved in quite a few measures around about, I guess, strengthening our offering within offshore renewables. So, you know, renewables has been there for a long time, and obviously we're now seeing all these turbines turning up offshore. But there's quite a gulf between the two organisations, or sorry, not two organisations, the two industries. You know, they're quite different, and we're starting to kind of go through this process of working out where the gaps are, in how we behave and what we do, and the processes that we use for oil and gas. You know, how can we refine those and start pointing everything towards being successful and you know, and functional and delivering within offshore renewables as well. So we're aware of the diversification piece. We're absolutely behind this idea that oil and gas is going to fuel the energy transition, but there's going to be a whole pile of stuff comes out of it.
Oh man!
But you know what? We've got to focus our attention. You can't chase everything. You've got to start looking. So for us, it's, you know, it's oil and gas, it's carbon capture and hydrogen, and it's the offshore renewables piece.
Awesome. That is it. We get it now. Everybody gets it that's watching this. Absolutely understands it. Fantastic. Now it's outstanding. Now, I made a howling error because we've only met once or twice before. Mm-hmm. And again, this whole thing, the Cruxcast, is about getting behind the profiles, right? So if you read your profile, you get, well, this guy was born in Aberdeen and lived his whole life in Aberdeen. He's pretty much just sort of gravitated around Aberdeen grammar. And just lived around there. But no, I learned yesterday it's quite the opposite. So take us back to the start. Where were you born?
Yeah, so I was born in Holland, in The Hague. We were a sort of a young, as a young family, we were kind of expats. So for the first decade of my life, we were doing that kind of traveling expat life. So born in Holland. Don't remember much about Holland because we left by the time I was a year and a half old. And then we hot-footed it down to Nigeria and kind of followed the Shell gravy train down there. A few more memories of Nigeria. It's not quite vivid in my kind of memory bank, but you know, a lot of heat. You know, in my memory, I can remember that. I can remember a lot of dangerous animals. You know, I've got this kind of vivid memory of being sat on the back of my mum's bike and you know, down the road, and there's a snake crossing the road, and as a kid thinking, what's that, you know? But you know, I don't remember an enormous amount about Nigeria either. You know, Nigeria was sort of that point between kind of being a baby and a kind of a middle-sized or relatively tall-sized toddler, I guess. And then we hot-footed onto Malaysia. So we spent probably my formative primary years down in Miri in Sarawak, down in Borneo.
Crikey!
Yeah, cool place down there, you know.
But I guess the folks were from Aberdeen, right, or certainly from Scotland. No,
not at all. So I've got one of my mum is from Derbyshire originally, and my dad is from Staines, down London way. So yeah, Aberdeen.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I mean they just. I guess we used to live down. We had a house down in Derbyshire when we were away across the other side of the world, and we didn't really visit very often. But then Aberdeen, I guess that magnetic pull within the oil industry just dragged us back to the UK when I got to the stage where it was a choice between sending me off to boarding school, you know, several months a year, or coming back to the UK before we hit secondary age.
Crikey, I have this now. I grew up in Glasgow and went offshore in Aberdeen as soon as I could, and then moved to Aberdeen. Yes, I've travelled for business quite extensively around the world, but I had this romantic vision that all the people that I've met that were expat kids seem to have such cool lives, and the fact that they were exposed to such diversity at a young age, and even just languages, cultures, and all of that. You know, I have this romantic vision that's sort of set you up as a person with maybe different values to average Joe Brit because you've been around the world and experienced all these cultures.
Yeah, I think I've taken a few things out of that, but you know, in some respects, I guess you just grow up exposed to all of that stuff, all these different influences that come in, and I think it just makes you question difference an awful lot less. You know, you just don't spot it. I mean, bizarrely though, because as an expat, you know, you live on a camp, working for shell. It was English, Scottish, and Dutch white kids that you're kind of running around with.
Yeah.
But the rest of the world is so different, and you just didn't really question any of those things. So yes, I do think that's kind of given me or not even an appreciation, just you just don't question difference at all, really. These days. Diversity, yeah, definitely being exposed, I think, to different cultures, different foods. I mean, food's a massive part of my life. I think we were discussing yesterday that, for me, travel is about food, and so again, you grow up in a country like Malaysia where fish head curry is the delicacy, and wow. You'll eat absolutely anything, moving forward. Yeah. And I think the other thing I've picked up from there is a pretty strong immune system. Grubbing about on the beach every day and being able to roam free range. I think it makes a difference. So I try and put my kids outside as often as I can, see if we can build up their immune systems.
Yeah, go and eat mud. And soil. Yeah, exactly. So at some point during all this nicking about on beaches and eating fish head curry and all of that, someone said, "Let's move back to the UK. That'll be fun." Yeah. That must have hit you like a ton of bricks.
It did. I can still remember standing at the top of the staircase coming off the plane in Manchester and watching my breath freeze and just sort of dying a little inside, thinking, what, wait a second, I don't remember Holland, but the last 8 years of my life have been about 40 degrees heat, Yeah,
I've been in sandals or bare feet.
Yeah, so that was a surprise. And then coming up to Aberdeen about sort of September 1990 to join.
And you were about what age?
I was about 10, so straight into Sister Anthony's primary 5 class at St. Joseph's. Sister Anthony was a particular kind of teacher. I got on with her really, really well because she would reward kids with Mars bars when you could read a proper Scots poem properly. Right. So that I could get behind that kind of reward system very, very quickly.
That into St. Joseph's? Because I had a Catholic school, right? I had a Catholic school upbringing as well. Was that a strong religious faith throughout the family, or just
no? My dad's Catholic originally, but not particularly practicing, and I guess never forced us as kids to kind of go down that route. But when we came to Aberdeen, we kind of traipsed around a few of the primary schools, and we just got a choice. Which one did we like the most, and we liked St. Joe's the most. But yeah, it was. What was it? Was it a surprise? It was certainly confusing for me. I can remember, I can remember going to the first kind of school assembly, and it wasn't assembly; it was mass, and everybody's out of their seats and they're queuing up, and I'm thinking, I better join this line, and then everybody's eating something and drinking from a cup, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, but I'll just keep following.
Thinking back, to be immersed in that at 10 years old, I mean, I got it from primary 1 all the way through, right? So the stuff that Catholic kids know, all the responses to certain parts of prayers, and all the bit where you bend down, you stand up, the bit where it must have been a head melter.
It was utterly confusing, but you got very good at mimicking as quickly as you could, or moving your mouth in time, like a horribly dubbed movie, trying to make sure that you know what you're talking about. Yeah. But no, I didn't have a Scooby, but then you get immersed in it and you get used to it, and it was a great fun school. The school had a convent in the middle of it. You'd have to, from one end of the school where all the classrooms were, you'd have the gym at the far end of the school, and in the middle was a traditional convent with the nuns kind of moving around the school, and you just got very, very used to that kind of way of life as quick as you could. Very, very different to what I'd walked away from in Malaysia, though.
I bet, absolutely. Incredible. We'll come back to that. Maybe the seeds that planted in just a second. But then you move into grammar school, Aberdeen Grammar, famous Aberdeen Grammar. Was that a high point of your life, a struggle, or good point, or great memories, bad memories?
Different. Very different. I think when you go through that kind of transition of, you live most of your life up to that point somewhere else, you come to the UK, you join a school in P5 where at least you've got a few years to get, and you immerse yourself, and I kind of immersed myself in that life and built up friends at primary school, and then you suddenly feel like you're a big fish in a small pond, and then you hit secondary school, and I picked Spanish was my language choice. Somebody told me it was the easiest of the languages, so that figured quite highly in my choices. And there was only one Spanish class at the school, but I think there was 4 French, and there was maybe 2 or 3 German, and everybody else in my class from primary
that way
stood off in those directions. You suddenly find yourself sat in a classroom with older kids and having to reestablish relationships. And I think I kind of got a little bit lost by that whole thing, because everyone I knew and everything I knew was way over here, and trying to maintain relationships while they were all building friendships elsewhere. And I guess I kind of reflect on my, not negatively on my secondary school experience, but not positively. It was an experience, and I did my thing, and I got my head down, and I was studious, but I didn't really enjoy it. And you stand out. I'm a big tall guy.
For those that haven't met you, and we're both sitting down right now, what is the number? 6 foot what?
Yeah, 6'9". So I'm 6'9".
Yep.
And I was, to the best of my knowledge, always 6'9" from about 5.
So you're enormous, and you've got an English accent, right?
No, I'd done my best to scrub that English accent away by the time I hit first year. I think actually, it's funny. I was very, very, very conscious about it when I came to the UK, and it wasn't because I got kind of, nobody had a real go at me in primary school, but you're very, very conscious, I think, of difference at that point when you're coming in from a different world. So I did my best to sort of iron that accent out of my, very, very consciously as well as a kid. Yeah. But difference is a funny thing. It's a horrible thing, I think, at school. You just want to be in the middle, don't you?
Yes. Quite happily, just in that sort of middle table is fine.
Middle where you're not, and that, the height thing's fine. I'm cool with the height thing, but I'm taller than 99.7% of the population of the UK. So it's an easy thing to come at you for at school. It's just the difference.
Oh, totally.
And, I was never a very aggressive tall guy either. So it was an experience.
An experience, but again, all of this is all leads you to where you are just now. So you pack up your stuff, and at some point, I guess you go from you're like, right, I'm going to university, and you head off to Edinburgh, right?
Yeah. So we headed off to Edinburgh. Jumped on the train on my own. It was a family weekend away at a wedding, I think, and I had to hop back up to Aberdeen to get my stuff and jump on the train down to Edinburgh. And it was kind of cool because you sort of thought, I specifically made this choice to go to Heriot-Watt to kind of get away from Aberdeen and step out on my own. But it was also pretty anxious. You're sitting on that train, and then you get to your halls, and you're thinking, here's my palace. But you don't know anyone again. You just don't know anyone. So I can vividly remember that first night in halls, and I'm propping my door open, because if somebody walks past,
hi.
They'll come and speak to me, and I'm sitting at my desk with a broadleaf newspaper. Why I picked I picked up a Guardian or something like that. And I'm sitting thinking nobody's going to want to speak to me if I look back on it. But I'm a kind of a great believer in serendipity. Things kind of happen for a reason, and you end up in the right place at the right time. And I just ended up with a kind of a radius around me of probably about 15-20 meters in that hole was just some brilliant characters, and you get to know them very quickly, and you share a kitchen, and you share a life, and you share food, and you share a lot of hangovers, I guess, very, very quickly. And it was great. It was a real sort of I've kind of found my people. I kind of left school behind. I think there was only one guy from school that went to Heriot-Watt, and we weren't great friends. We knew each other, but we weren't great friends. And it was a clean slate. It was great.
So looking back, these were the sort of growing up and being expat kid and all that. There was formative building blocks going in there, but you really start to find yourself at Heriot-Watt. You're doing, is it electrical and electronic engineering?
Electrical and electronic engineering. Yeah, 5 years of that taught me that I was not very good at it. I was okay at it, but I didn't enjoy it. So it was kind of a lot of other things. A lot of things happened for me at university though, because I took a year out in the middle. I think I got big time into my cricket. I played rugby at school up to a certain age, worked my way up to the first team, and had a trip up to the Black Isle, way up above Inverness on a very cold, frosty winter morning, and I looked at my opposite number, another second row, and he was the same height as me and twice as wide, and he dumped me on my head within 5 minutes of the game starting. So I spent the next sort of 6 hours of the day on a bus from the Black Isle to Aberdeen with concussion, and then into A&E, and I thought, I'm going to start focusing my attention on cricket. So I got really into my cricket and started doing really well at university, and got into the under-19 Scotland team, and we qualified for a World Cup in New Zealand. And so I thought, I'm going to concentrate on this for a year and just pause the university experience. And it was brilliant. It was a different year where I was kind of working and training and getting my fitness up, because first year at university, you learn an awful lot of things, and I did that and gained an awful lot of timber around the midsection as well. So there was a lot of there was a lot of fitness to be done that year. But there was a discipline, I think, that I found that year. A brilliant experience of I was one of the older guys in the team, so I and the youngest, so I was probably 19 turning 20, and I think the youngest member of the team was probably 15. There was a couple of really, really bright, competent young guys that were in the team who've actually gone on to do an awful lot better than any of the rest of us did in cricket.
Right.
So you take some of these kids under your wing and you learn a different skill set. So that was all brilliant, but then you come back from that and you've got to kind of kick on. So if you want to be a professional sportsman, you've got to kind of make that leap between under 19 and sort of the professional league. And I just didn't fancy it. It was too much of a leap of faith for me, and got back into university. But yeah, third and fourth year of university taught me that I don't want to do this the rest of my life. So I got through the degree, right, and thought, do something else.
What a fantastic thing though to get to play a sport at that level and be able to make judgments about whether you want to pursue it. Still a big cricket fan?
Big cricket fan. I mean, one of the downsides of going to that World Cup, of course, as a Scotland boy, is you think you're the top of the world, and then you get drawn with Australia and West Indies in your group, and you get absolutely pummeled. I have never, as an opening bowler, I've never been hit for the bigger. I mean, we were playing in a Test stadium. We're playing in Carisbrooke in Dunedin, and bowling against this guy that's opening for the West Indies. And he scored 190, 180 or something like that by the time we were at drinks at half time, and we had about 9 new balls because he was hitting these balls clean out of the stadium. And it was just a whole brand new experience. But yeah, hey, some of those guys we played against there have gone on and done big things and playing in the Test cricket for their nations and stuff. So yeah, I definitely still am a big fan. I'm pushing the boy towards it because it's a great learning experience. And I think, it doesn't have to be cricket, but for me, it's team sport. Team sport, yeah, it's just such a metaphor for life and business.
Absolutely.
You experience actual magic.
Yes.
Those kind of fleeting glimpses of just positive momentum where nobody's said anything, nobody's done anything, but suddenly everybody is acting together, and you're winning games that you should lose, and it's genuinely, for me, it's beautiful. It's real magic. It's real.
Yeah,
magic.
Totally. I'm getting to live that. I had a rubbish sort of dalliances with sport along the way. Played a bit of rugby. Really loved rugby, but never achieved anything at rugby. But I'm living it vicariously through my son, who plays for Granite City, which was formerly Aberdeen Grammars, sort of Wanderers, all squished together. Now Granite City. So it's funny hearing you talk about that. Prior to lockdown, was getting on the bus to go to the Black Isle to play the boys up there at Ross County and all these kind of places and all of that. And he's doing that. And he's a far more talent. I watch him and think, he is leagues ahead of me. When I was at my prime in rugby, he is leagues ahead of me at 16 years old. And what that lad gets out of team sport, discipline and all of that, and just all of the juice he gets out of team sport is going to stand him in such good stead as he moves on into uni and all of that.
And you can't put your finger on the equation as well. I mean, we had so beyond all the once I'd kind of done with the Scotland stuff, came back and played for Aberdeenshire, and that was my boyhood team, and I played a little bit down in Edinburgh, but came back in the end. And we had this season back in 2009, which coincidentally was the year I got married. Great year for me, but it was. We won everything in that year, and it was and there was a process of building that team. You couldn't put your finger on the elements of that equation that absolutely came together that year, but it was genuinely match after match after match. Somebody different would stand up, and as soon as that person stood up, you just the collective lift you got, and we just in our heads we couldn't be beaten that year. It was just fantastic, and again,
what a year!
You're right. It's nothing in the grand scheme of things. It's
fleeting, yeah.
It's Premier League Northeast cricket, right? But it is it's special to be part of. It really is special to be part of when you're a group of people. And the other thing, there's 11 members of a team, in a cricket team, but there was probably only 14 different individuals that took part in that team over the course of a whole season. So it was a really consistent mass of people. Playing together, playing football together, running, training, doing all this stuff outside, and that's just, if you can achieve anything that feels at 5% of that in any business, then you're doing some amazing things.
Outstanding. So just getting back to uni, leave uni and electrical and electronic degree under your belt, and then think, right, so do you go into electrical and electronic as a career?
The first thing I do is start applying to the Shells and the BPs and all that kind of stuff. So I as soon as I came out of Edinburgh, I went over to Kilmarnock. So I was together with my future wife at the time, and we've been sort of living a long distance relationship for a long time. So I went over there to get fed and watered by the future in-laws at the time. And during the course of that summer, I spent most of my time chasing the milk rounds and putting applications in. But it was demoralizing. I can remember at the time, spending 4 or 5 hours on an application, and you hit the submit button at 10:30 at night. You wake up the next day and you've been rejected by before breakfast by a bunch of computers. So I found it really difficult to get into. So I was looking. I didn't look much further afield than kind of the big organizations. I looked for the kind of the big graduate schemes, and then I started thinking about the other things I'd done. In the 4th year at university, I'd done an assembly language programming module, and you know what, it'd been interesting, real sort of gritty problem solving. So I thought, I could get into software development, and I chanced upon this graduate training scheme at a company called EDS at the time, which is a big American software and kind of computing company. And again, serendipity kind of came into this. I got invited to an interview at St James's Park in Newcastle. Me and Gemma got a weekend in Newcastle, and I was interviewed by my future boss. And the interview was going great. And then at some point he sort of said to me, and you can explain me the software lifecycle. And I'm kind of going, oh dear, right, you've stumped me there. So I kind of cobbled together some awful answer and thought, that's it, I'm toast.
I'm out.
I'm done here. And as luck would have it, I got offered the job in Newcastle. So I think my the boss who had interviewed me, who was from the Aberdeen office, had obviously not liked somebody in the Newcastle office and thought he'd dumped this guy who doesn't know anything about software on him. But funnily enough, again, back to serendipity, me and Gemma, we'd done that trip between Carlisle and Newcastle on the A69, and we were sort of thinking, oh Christ, I'm going to be working in Newcastle and you're going to be living in Glasgow, and that's an awful road. That's a scary, awful road when you've got articulated lorries overtaking.
Oh yeah, yep.
And as luck would have it, there was somebody who'd been offered a job in Aberdeen who wanted a job in Newcastle, and I wanted the job in Aberdeen. And we did a swap, and you know what? You just little things like that just sort of happen in your life that you can't really control or
my goodness,
and it just happened, and I got thrust into this graduate world in EDS in Aberdeen. Really interesting company, and it was kind of I got lucky. I got really lucky. I got into an established project. It was a sort of a hydrocarbon accounting system for the interconnector pipeline that's down from Belgium to Zeebrugge in Belgium. Right. And from Bacton in England to Belgium. And it was about 10 years old. It was there was a lot of constant of development work. We had out of hours sort of support rotas where we had our pagers. Pagers were a thing.
Pagers were a thing
15 years ago. And you get called out in the middle of the night. You get woken up at 2 a.m. You got 30 quid for getting woken up in the middle of the night. It was just dream ticket stuff.
That's the best. Wake me up anytime you like.
Exactly. Every time those tickets, those calls are coming in, and you're getting all this stress because these operators are, they're trying to get millions of pounds of gas from one end of the world to the other, or from Europe to the UK, and you're just clocking up. It's £30. I'll have more of that. Yeah. But it was going back to, I guess, that conversation we had about discipline. It was a really structured, strong project that was delivered in a very, very structured way. Right. So there was probably 20 guys in that project, kind of a mixture of software developers and team leaders and testers and configuration managers and all that kind of good stuff. And I got really lucky that my team lead in there, again, a guy called Dave, who, we've got a lifelong friendship now between the two families, albeit I didn't make much of an impression on him because my wife knows him and his family through me, but she was made godmother of their children before I was ever even considered. So God, no idea, clearly I'm the middleman or something in that one. But this guy taught me about professionation and calm. Right. And I can vividly remember this particular day where I was just like, this guy's got it going. Well, something awful went wrong with the application and everything was down, and we've got all these metrics on us. So you've got to be 99.9% uptime and all this stuff down. and everyone's buzzing. The whole place is running around like headless chickens. And in the middle of all that headless chickens was this little oasis of calm that surrounded Dave's head as he just kind of sat down and just systematically worked his way through a process and brought this thing back up. And it was sort of,
I want to be like him.
I was watching it going, that guy's got it. All these other guys, everybody else running around like nothing else. He's got it, you know.
And it's funny that level of leadership. You know, I've been in management teams where the top leader, if you will, was a panic merchant, and I've been in management teams where the top leader was cool hand Luke. Yeah. And that seeing those two environments, when markets dip, when there's problems, if there's an incident, if that project doesn't come through, if there's a difficulty with a client or whatever it might be, seeing how the team feeds from the energy of that leader in those in those two different ways to deal with problems. I'd much more go with the cool hand look. I remember a particular guy who inspired me, and I still put in a bit of a pedestal, a CEO I worked with. The biggest problem, we could have kicked the door in his office and all ran in and with our hairs on fire, you know, the world's falling apart, and it would be, sit down, we'll just talk it through, and let's just find out what our options are, and just you know, has anyone died? No. Right, okay, right, good, excellent, right, so we're in a great place.
It's a superpower, you know. For me, it's like it's like you say, it can cut through almost anything, and you're right, you can take people off the edge by just being calm and breathing. You know, take a breath, ask the right questions. How bad is this? Is this real? You know, you've heard something. Is this actually real, right? You know, are we overreacting here? Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, you know, there's a simple, pragmatic, practical way out of that panic, isn't there?
It's funny you should say that. Is this real? Because that person that I put on a pedestal would always ask, "Are we chasing shadows here? Are we honestly? Is this actually a thing?"
Yeah.
Is if we left this for 24 hours, would it still be there tomorrow?
Yeah.
And actually, many times it's just forgotten. It's gone. It's away.
Yeah. And you know what? You can, in the same way you can bring people down, I guess the opposite energy can take people up, can't it? You know, one person's panicking, and all of a sudden 10 do. But yeah, you know, I like to think I bring a different kind of energy. I think there's this kind of space for that kind of calm, cool, collected, and there's also space for that super energizing, you know, uplifting type, which is not really me. But you know what? I guess that's one of the reasons that you and I get along so well.
Maybe I think you'd like me in small doses. Maybe I think you'd like to be around me in small doses. So again, I'm not blowing smoke here, but there are principal project engineers who have stayed being fantastic principal project engineers and stayed around that project world their whole career and done wonderful stuff. What gets you from project director to chief operating officer at an engineering consultancy? How does that happen?
No, if I'm honest, I probably can't honestly answer that question with a definite sort of this is what happened. I mean, I still spend a lot of time questioning, you know, why do people sort of look to me sometimes in a conversation? Why would somebody listen to me? You know, because you know everyone's got an imposter syndrome somewhere inside their body, so you don't always put yourself on a pedestal. But I guess at some point when I kind of reflected back on kind of, you know, just not even just the Optimus experience, but you know, it was EDS and to Optimus. There was a point in time in Optimus where I went to BG and experienced the operators. You know, 2 or 3 years in the operator world, and I think in most of those situations, there's just an element of my personality that some people kind of look towards for answers, and you know, and I guess it's just it kind of felt like a process of osmosis. The problem with that being that you suddenly find yourself in that position and you start going, Christ, am I actually a leader? How do I back this up with something that actually looks like a piece of paper that says, yes, you know what you're talking about?
Yeah, I've been to C-suite school.
No, I've not been to C-suite school. Not been to C-suite school, sadly. You know, if it exists, you'll have to show me where it is. But no, you know, but you know, but I guess what it does though is it started to make me so much more kind of curious about all the kind of content out there. I mean, we were kind of talking about it the other day. There's just reams of it, and you know, over the last 14 months, we've had so much silence out there in the world to allow us to kind of think and start processing our own thoughts and question who we are and where we're going. And there's all this fantastic content out there for you to hoover up on Audible and in books that I've been doing a lot of it. And you cover a broad spectrum and you're trying to pick up on those nuggets that really speak to you.
I think there's something quite special there because, if you're, clearly there are people behind closed doors. Not everyone lives their life on social media. Some leaders do, and it's wonderful to see because actually I think, I love the Edelman Trust Report. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and it's they've done a UK version of it now, and the world wants to hear from CEOs talking about subjects like climate change and energy transition and homelessness, bizarrely, and just things about local issues, so that
human issues, things,
things,
things. That we live in.
Yeah. I mean, we were having a sort of frame up chat yesterday, and the reason we're here is because the videos that you make where you show the fact that you're wrestling with ideas. So there are brilliant CEOs that are out there that are using old historic models of CEO-ness, right? There are CEOs that are standing at a crossroads going, actually, there's so much information out here about other ways and maybe modern ways. We were talking yesterday, I got one of my digital friends sent me a copy of Beyond Good, that book that's urging CEOs to be more tuned into the world and the planet and communities and what's happening and all of that. That whole conscious capitalism, conscious leadership thing, there's only a few people I actually see that are openly talking about how they're trying to find information and wrestling with the whole issue. And you seem to be one of those that are leading this.
Yeah, I guess I'm in the middle of a transition myself around kind of purpose. I mean, you go through experiences in life as a person, as a colleague, as a leader, as a parent, and it all leads you towards something, and all of a sudden, I guess you start questioning what that something is. I think you're right about the conscious capitalism thing, B Corps and all that kind of stuff. Just now, there's a big conversation happening down about the Better Business Act, about the fact that purpose has to be inbuilt into business because there's so much good that can come out of business. It doesn't have to be that awful side of capitalism, I guess, that has kind of come to the fore and is just so bleak.
It's a bit more than when we're. I'm just thinking back to the past. How much are we giving to charity next year? Well, we've budgeted 10 grand. Give 5. That'll do. Job done. Job done. Yeah, social responsibility done.
Exactly. And ideally, give it to a charity that's going to give some kind of kickback, just like tickets to sports matches or something. Get a return out of it. But it's like,
oh man,
there's conscious capitalism. I got exposed to it 3 or 4 months ago. So I'm by no means am I remotely embedded in it yet. But it speaks to me at a sort of a visceral level. There's something involved in this. That again, almost going back to that conversation about sporting teams and momentum, in sport, it's that momentum, it's that winning, it's that feeling you're on the way. I think the equivalent of that in the business world is how much good you're carrying with you. How much is coming out of this is not just the bottom line. Of course, the shareholders are important. Of course, turning profit is important. But you know what? There's so many things you can do with that money at the end of the day, and how much of a difference can you make to the world in the meantime? So, looking at this stuff. I think if you don't want to be involved in a business that's got purpose, then what are you doing?
But you can see how people, you and I have. I mean, you are living that life. I've sort of tinkered with it, been on a few boards and stuff like that. Made it to MD of some really small companies, nothing like what you're doing. But I've been in that environment where you can see how people just it's all about profit. It's all about shareholders. That's it. Our reason for being here is to feed this foie gras goose to the point of where it nearly explodes, and then we're going to flip it and we're going to bugger off with suitcasefuls of cash. That's what our reason for living is. And you see people who had purpose actually lose purpose because of this sort of brainwashing that I'm just here for that suitcase full of cash. Yeah. That's it. But I think there's something quite, you're a young CEO, and I this might sound a little bit sort of throwaway, but I think now there's almost as if we've got given everything that we've been through sort of compounds this. I feel now that maybe I'm the generation that's moving out because I'm 50, there's a 10-year gap between us, but I think it's a responsibility on young leaders like you at least set the foundation for this change in leadership.
Talk about different things, because I think, going back to what you said there about the bucket loads of cash, I mean, that might well be a motivator to somebody, but it's probably a motivator to 2 or 3 people in that organization. Yeah. And there's 95% of the people back there who are going to go and deliver that wheelbarrow full of cash, who've got no reason to be motivated behind that whatsoever. And you can't force that. How can you possibly force it? You could probably create a business full of robots that are, putting one foot in front of the other and doing, like, as you say, it's like a habitual thing. And I think, lockdowns kind of show, I mean, certainly from a personal perspective, you think about how you reacted at the beginning of lockdown when everybody it's all panic and it's all anxiety and everything about your normal routine goes out the window, but it becomes about business and family. And the family part is like feed them, get them into bed, and then get back to your laptop and then go to sleep. Right. And you sort of come out of that thing and you realize how quickly the habits that you've formed can just get absolutely destroyed. And then you've got new ones, and those new ones are awful and they're depleting and there's no energizing in between. And I think it's been so easy during that kind of lockdown to get into that habit of not, recharging your batteries, because all your good stuff goes out the window. You haven't got time for all the great energizing activities that you do. And, so I think all that stuff has pointed me back towards a kind of a personal journey, I suppose, towards purpose. And I'm putting my first foot towards that. But I hope all of that overflows and it comes out in Optimus and it's something I can help others get behind. A little bit more motivating than that bucket of cash.
Yeah, totally. For people who might be sitting going, oh yeah, Chris, I'm kind of into that. What resource would you say, whether it's websites or books or anything that you've read, made you think, yeah, absolutely, something in this?
Yeah, so the first book that I read that started to make me really question things. Have you ever come across Gavin Oates? He's an author and a speaker he stays down in central Scotland. He put on an awesome thing a couple of years ago at the Hydro. Which I think it was called Fire It Up Scotland or Fire Up Scotland, and it was meant to be the alternative careers fair for school kids. So they invited schools from all over the UK to the Hydro to turn up, and they got guys who are rock stars and jugglers and circus acts to talk about the fact that career isn't just what you think it used to be.
I don't need to work. I don't need to get in an office and be an accountant.
Absolutely,
You do need them, but
yeah, exactly. But he wrote a book called Shine, and it was one of the first books that I started to read that really started to chime with me, and I started to go and really question. There was a particular thing in it where he talks about the fact that he just talks about human choice, I suddenly made this link between I'm feeling rubbish today, I'm miserable, I'm annoyed, I'm angry. And all of a sudden, I'm like, that's all from there. Every single part of that feeling and that emotion that I've brought into every other decision today was because of that one thing somebody said first thing this morning after breakfast that's really annoyed me, and it's just coloured the rest of my day. And so there's just some lovely concepts in there that really resonated with me, and then started me down a path of starting to kind of hoover up the stuff. And so I went on from him, and then I kind of got into Brené Brown. So she talks an awful lot about vulnerability and shame and sort of the embracing imperfection in life, so again, really resonate with her. But then it's just led me into all these other areas. The conscious capitalism is something that I've kind of gone into through Entrepreneurial Scotland. So I wanted to get into some more leadership training, but I'm going, what, Optimus isn't just any old company. We're at this kind of, we certainly were once at the real entrepreneurial end of this, and then over time, you build up a company, and you could question whether an engineering services company in Aberdeen is entrepreneurial or not. But I'm going, but that's where we're going back to. This moving forward, it is. So I wanted to start exposing myself to a kind of a more entrepreneurial brand of leadership training. So I did this conscious capitalism course, and it's run by them, and it's run out of Babson College in the US. And there's a lecturer called Raj Sisodia who's written his own books about conscious capitalism, and it's just fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating because it's so anchored in self, and they've got this piece around there's this triple vision there, which is about heal me, right? You can't serve the world unless you've healed you first, right? Heal me, serve we, look after everybody around you, change the world, right? And there's just this kind of this step-by-step process that you can strengthen yourself, and then you can bring that, and then you can just spread that joy, and there's just something in that I just go, you know what, it's just right, and if you can instill that in business, and you can,
the hairs are standing up on the back of the arm here.
Are they? Well, you should check out Conscious Capital. You need to check out this guy Raj Sisodia. He's a very, very interesting character. There's some good YouTube videos out there on conscious capitalism from him. But yeah, I just there's a few things you go through, I think, in life where, and I'm miles. I think we were saying yesterday, we were kind of framing this up. I'm probably on the verge of midlife crisis right now, but it's or
midlife epiphany,
or maybe midlife epiphany. But there's just times, I think, where you're sat in a room and you're hearing something, you just go in, God, this is where I need to be right now. It just makes all the sense in the world. And if I could just distill it into a bottle and hand it off to a few more people and kind of just spread that word, it's a better place,
Oh man alive. Listen, how has, just a few minutes, if you will, because I think this is gold, and the last couple of minutes of this have been, I mean, the whole thing's been great, but the last couple of minutes have just been gold dust for me. I think really powerful stuff, and really encouraging to hear young senior leaders in industry thinking like this. I think this is awesome, right? This has been a turning point for me, because I think you're right. We do get on that hamster wheel. For the last year, I've just been doing what we do. It used to be very sort of meerkatish and up and looking out. I've been down and delivering for a year, and it's just so great to hear this kind of stuff. How has what's happened in the last year, I wouldn't say changed you as a leader, but how has it impacted you as a leader? What are you fearful of? What have we learned, and what changes going forward?
How has it changed me? I think it's reminded me, it's completely taken me back to that piece around calm being the superpower, right? Because, you go into it on day one and it's just unprecedented, right? How overused was the word unprecedented at the start of all this? And the first few weeks were, it was real sort of, head down, arse up, just panic stations, and you're working all hours of the day, and you're thinking of all the things that can go wrong, and you're at the same time, kids are home and you're homeschooling, and you're just trying to piece together, you're sort of patching together all these aspects of your life. And then it was like we punched through a wall, and it was just like, poof. And you know what? The tech at work stood up, because that was the thing you were most worried about at the beginning is, are we going to run into trouble here with the tech? Are people going to be able to communicate? Is there going to be a way we can carry on collaborating? Are we going to have to somehow work out how people can, but we went home, we tested it, it worked.
Especially you guys, because you're so software, hardware dependent, right?
You got to be on it. And you know what an advert for using local business. We've been supported by the same IT company for 20 years. We never asked them to get us ready for a global pandemic. We were just ready, everything was in place, ready to just go and do these things. And as I say, you punch through that wall, and I can almost just remember this point where you just went, right, the world is silent. And it was silent because you go out for a walk and there's nothing. I guess what it's just made me is more reflective on myself, on what's kind of going on in the business. It's reminded me that calm is so important, for that. The homeschooling thing reminded me of that as well, because again, you're in a goldfish bowl, right? You never spent this much time together as a family trying to do so many different things, and you're up at 2 a.m. trying to find enough electronic devices in the house, old phones and this, that, and the next thing, to have like 5 concurrent video calls happening at the same time. And it all feels so pressurized, and yet it's so unimportant. And again, I think you sort of punch through that eventually, and you just go, you know what, we're being anxious for the sake of being anxious. None of it is helping any of this. So I think it sort of pushed everyone, I think, to an edge, or I guess it's still pushing a lot of people to an edge. There's a whole pile of consequences, I think, going to come off the back of this, but it pushed a lot of people through that. It's kind of made us all recognize the value in some areas of this kind of living. We are not tied to an office. We can moving forward. We need to. There's going to be a million questions have to be asked about how you practically make this future version of flexible work.
Yeah. Have you nailed that yet?
No, not at all.
Nowhere near it.
We are, well, we as I say, we're still out of the office. Our lease is up in October, and we're looking to commit to a new office, and that's going to be all the planning is going to be around this new office. How do we settle into that? How do we generate this kind of new way of working around this new business? And we're going to be kicking off a focus group in the next few months to just start asking all those difficult questions and just try and nail it, because it's not just as simple as saying, pick your hours, but we want to be as flexible as we can, whilst also recognizing that different levels in the business need more supervision. We're going to be managing a workforce that's in an office and out of an office. So every meeting we have is going to have to take account of people in different parts of the world, but we can make it work. We know, we've done it in the worst scenario already.
Yeah.
And we just made it work. So let's just take that momentum into this new world. And just carry on doing that, having that positivity and recognizing that moving forward, everything we make from this point forward is a choice, right? We got forced into that position. We were there and we all just had to react. And I think the world has shown, like I say, I was so excited about getting that jab the other week, because it's like, we didn't conceive of this vaccine being required 14 months ago, and the world has come together. Yep. And the magic of science has generated this thing. Well, you know what? If we got forced into that position, we 99% of everyone, I think, reacted positively. And moving forward, we've got a choice. So let's just make the best of that choice, and just try and. I think you said something there about how do we take some of this positivity forward? Because I'm like, you know what? We've created this. We've had we've turned lemons into lemonade. Let's not forget about it. Let's not make this experience. Let's not put it behind us, because actually, you know what? And there's always that thing about don't look back. But you know what? I think we can look back on all the positive aspects of what we've learned. It's been unquestionably awful for so many people, and I'm so lucky that I haven't been so badly affected in certain areas, and our family has kind of gotten away with it relatively scot-free. We've not had any major illnesses as a result. But if we could take some of those positive things out of it and just carry them forward with us, I just, I genuinely think this generation can change the world, and we have to. Christ, the energy transition is right there, isn't it?
Man, at this point, I normally ask you, what hobbies you have and all that. I don't want to, because it would be a bit like doing a newscast with some amazing stuff, and then going, and also in other news, there was a cat stuck up a tree. So.
Yeah, I'd only be taking you into a boring cliche world of sourdough bread baking and all that kind of stuff,
And brewing your own beer, which we never touched on. Yeah. I don't actually want to dilute what you just said. I don't want to detract from anyone who's listened to this to get those gems, because I think it's gold dust. It's just beautiful. Listen, that's an hour. Just gone like that. Yeah. It's incredible. I think this is great. Let's make a date to 6 months, 8 months, come back and do it again, and we can maybe scratch the surface a wee bit more about what's how it's all working out and doing that. But I've enjoyed this so much. I wish you all the best in what you're doing, and keep pushing and keep exploring, and that whole leadership piece. I think you are leading the way. I think it's excellent.
I hope so. Just got to try and gather as much of a following as possible, and as long as it's not just me. If other people believe it as well, then we'll have achieved something. But listen, thank you so much for having me on, Brother Doyle. I think we're kindred spirits somewhere underneath our kind of obvious facial.
I look like those aging apps. If you say if you do one of those aging apps and say, what do I look like when I'm like 100 years old? This is what you look like, I'm afraid. So
if I can look like you in 10 years' time, then I've traversed those 10 years pretty well, I hope.
Awesome time. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.
Good man.
And we'll keep in touch. All right. See you soon.